your Eufy S1 Pro wearable breast pump isn't working, it feels weak, or your output suddenly dropped, here are some practical Eufy S1 Pro troubleshooting tips you can try. So let's start by looking at low suction or no suction at all. So if your pump is feeling weak, here are my top troubleshooting tips. Firstly, check your seals. Wearable breast pumps work on suction, making sure that we have an adequate seal so no air can get in is absolute priority. Anytime that you have opportunity for air to get in, you are going to have lower suction. So we really need to make sure our seals are nice and secure. So what I mean by that is, say you don't have your flange clipped in properly. This gives opportunity for air to leak in, and that is going to disrupt our suction. So we want to make sure that we have these nice and firm. I always recommend pushing down nice firm fingers around when you have put your flange on properly. Also make sure that you have a good alignment up the top with the notch here for the pouring spout. Make sure it's nice and aligned. If you have it off center, again, it's not going to line up properly and you'll have potential for air to get in and disrupt the suction process. Next, we want to make sure that our other parts are also nice and firmly in. The duckbill valve can be a little bit of a problem because it just pushes in with the S1 Pro. So sometimes you think you have it in, but it's not quite in place. So make sure you push it in nice and firm and give it a little tug to make sure it's in. Again, with your diaphragm, this fits in a little bit better, but make sure that you've got it nice and firm. You don't have it just sitting on the top. It needs to be pushed right in as far as it will go. Now, with these two parts, these are very actively moving during our pumping session. So your duckbill valve is what takes your milk from your flange and pushes it into our collection cup. So it does this, opens and closes with the suction cycles during your pumping session. But as you can imagine, this is opening and closing. Over time, this little area here is going to loosen. And once it does, you'll see that it doesn't quite close back properly. So this again is one of those parts where if it's staying open, it's not giving opportunity for that airtight suction to occur when we need it. So this can really impact and weaken your suction. So if you're noticing that this is wearing, replace it. They are very inexpensive. You do need to replace these just because of general wear and tear around every 2 months anyway. Obviously, if you're exclusive pumping, you'll need to replace these potentially more often, or if you're only occasionally pumping once every, a few days, then these will obviously last longer. But keep in mind, these do wear on average around every 2 months. You will need to replace these. Given how cheap they are, this is one of the first point of calls I would recommend if you are noticing that you have low suction, would be to replace your duckbill valve as well as your diaphragm. So again, these work in and out during the suction. So these are the parts that are movable. They are silicone. They will wear over time. Your diaphragm's a little bit more sturdy, but again, this will start to stretch. Potentially you can get little cracks through it. Every 2 to 3 months, you will need to replace this. So if you have that loss of suction, highly recommend just replacing your diaphragm and your duckbill valve at the same time to see if that fixes the problem. Another point, just why we are talking about the parts, is make sure they are completely dry before you assemble them. Having moisture caught in your seals can lead to loss of suction, can lead to that little bit of an air gap. So just making sure that these are 100% dry before we put them together. So here's where I say you need to line it up, push nice and firm. These really do have that little bit of a lip that you need to push it up and over. And because it's such a firm silicone, I find you've got to add a little bit of gusto to this to push it up and over. We make sure we push nice and firm to make sure the center part is also in place. So we've checked our parts, they all look good. What other things can lead to that loss of suction? Now, we've talked about you need to have a proper air seal. We have the part where this attaches to our breast. Now, there's a couple of components. One is the outer breast tissue. We want to make sure that there are no big gaps. It's a wearable pump, so we're moving around. We want to make sure that our pump stays nice and securely in place. Don't want to move forward and then have air gaps. Obviously, these are made to be portable. It's why you've bought it. So it means we're relying more on a really well-fitted pumping bra. So when I say well-fitted, you want it firm enough that it's not going to move or loosen your wearable breast pump, and we can keep that nice and securely attached to our breast while we're moving around. The other part is we want to make sure that where it seals around our nipple, that is nice and secure. So there's two parts to this. One, making sure we have the correct alignment. So lean forward slightly and center your nipple when you're putting your pump on. So it comes up and our our nipple is nice and securely centered within the flange tunnel. And two, we need to then make sure this flange tunnel is the correct size for our nipple. So if it's too small, you're going to be drawing in more breast tissue than you need, but too loose or too large, and there's going to be big air gaps where your nipple is. So we're going to need to make sure that this is the correct size. To do that, in your kit, you will have a nipple measurement card. To find the right size of your flange, you're going to want to have a stimulated nipple, and we're going to simply want to place this over our nipple until we can see it moving nice and freely down all the way to the base of our nipple, but also making sure that there's not a large amount of areola. So for me, if my finger was my nipple, I would go for a 24 millimeter. It goes nice and down smoothly, and it's not drawing in large amounts of the areola. So for me, I could use this 24 millimeter flange as it is, but say you need a 19 millimeter diameter for your flange. This is where our flange inserts come into play. They simply slot into the flange and push down, making sure again you've got that nice secure fit, and then that will reduce our flange tunnel to the correct size. So we want to make sure there's no air coming in via our nipple, no air coming in via our breast and moving around, and making sure we've got adequate seals. All right, so your suction's going okay, but your pump's now not emptying you, or you've got low output with your Eufy S1 Pro. What are some of the things we can do? Flange size. So we just talked about your flange. Making sure that you have the correct flange size is really important, not just for the suction, but also for your output. So comfort is a huge factor in our pumping journey. We want to make sure, one, that we're comfortable, that we're not damaging our nipples, and that our nipple can move nice and freely in the flange tunnel to really draw out our breast milk. So if it is too large, that nipple isn't going to be moving in and out freely. You're going to be drawing in your areola, making it compress and be very uncomfortable, which will affect your output. And if it's too small, your nipple's going to rub against the inside, causing friction and again pain. It's not going to be able to move that freely in and out like we need, which will impact your output. So we want to make sure that this flange size is correct. Really important to note that during your postpartum, your flange size does change. So if you're having trouble with your output suddenly, come and remeasure your flange size. You may find that it has actually gotten smaller and you now need to use an insert or a smaller insert. Okay, we also want to make sure that our settings are suitable for us. Now, there isn't a one size fits all when it comes to your settings. On the pump itself, you have your stimulation and your expression mode. So we often start in the stimulation, the faster pulls, and these are for initiating your letdown. And then we normally cross over to the expression, which are these deeper pulls for drawing out your breast milk. What works for you, you'll have to really just do a trial and error to find out. Some people work with multiple stimulation modes, so they might respond well to 2 minutes of stimulation followed by 8 minutes of expression, 2 minutes of stimulation, 8 minutes of expression. Some people find that they respond better to 5 minutes of stimulation, 5 minutes of expression. Some people find that the 2 minutes at the start and the 1 letdown is all they need for their pumping, and they can do the rest on the expression mode. It really just depends on you and your body. So when you find your milk slowing, that's where I would recommend to switch back into the stimulation mode and get another letdown, and then go back into your expression mode and start trying again. Making sure that we are super comfortable when we are pumping. Again, that comfort is a really big factor. We want to make sure that we are comfortable, and don't be afraid to trial and error and see what's actually going to work for you and your body. Keep a journal or a diary and see what settings are working. Recommend starting low, especially on your suction levels, and then working your way up slowly. Don't make the mistake of starting high and then working down. You don't want it to feel like it's ripping your nipple off at the start, because remember that comfort is such a huge factor. So start low and work your way up until you find something that's comfortable and giving you a good output. So on the pump itself in the app, we can also adjust. They do have in the app different rhythms you can choose from. So you've got your max, your standard, your gentle, your natural. So I do like with the Eufy pumps using the app opposed to just the pump itself, because it gives you more options. Now, I wouldn't give too much depth to these descriptions. Try them out and see what pattern works best for you, what rhythm. So this is your standard, your 2 minutes on. So the 1 letdown followed by your expression. You can have a gentle, so that's your 2 different letdowns. With your max, they're giving you 3 different letdowns, or your natural, this is your 5 minutes on, stimulation, 5 minutes expression. So really have a play around with the Eufy app. You can create your own. So if you find that this really doesn't work for you, create your own and have a trial and see what works. You might also find your left or your right boob, you might have a lazy boob. So you need different settings for the different pumps. You can sync and unsync. You can create different ones for each breast as well. So don't be afraid to try it out. Now, pumping time. This is another one that I recommend trying and testing. You might be somebody that is good with a 15-minute or a 20-minute pumping session. You might be just somebody that needs 30 minutes of pumping to get the output. So again, it's not a one size fits all. try pumping for a little bit longer if your output is still low. And just remember, they're wearables, so they don't always respond to the same output that you might get with, say, an electric pump like your Spectra. Keep in mind, they are wearables. They aren't as powerful for drawing out your breast milk. So your output may be better on your Spectra, and with your Eufy, it may simply just be a little bit less. So keep that in mind as well. All right. So your pump then is not turning on, which is another issue you might face. Firstly, check your battery to make sure that your pump is fully charged. Check your connection points. So these parts here, make sure that they don't have any water exposure damage, that these aren't damaged, so your pump is charging properly. With your case, when we put these in, you want to make sure that it clips in place and you see this light flashing. If that's not flashing, then your pump isn't charging. So if I move that slightly and the magnetics is slightly off, that now is not charging even though it looks properly in place. So make sure you just clip it in, you can see the light. The other one to keep in mind is make sure that your case is actually charged. So this is on low charge, you can see, because it was flashing on and off. You can make sure it's even turned on. So if that's not got the lights on, then potentially you need to turn on your case. There's a USB-C charger. So if you're not sure, plug it in, put it in the wall and make sure that it is fully charged and see if that is working. You can also use the magnetic charger to put your pump on charge. Sometimes it might be that your case has stopped working, so you may need to just have a test and a trial to see that it's not your battery. All right, so if your pump suddenly stops working, normally it has an automatic shut off after 30 minutes. So you can either finish a pumping session or turn it back on. 30 minutes, I would recommend turning your pump off anyway. All right, so what happens if one side's not working, but the other is? So I recommend changing out the parts. Remember these duckbill valves, diaphragm, these are the parts that we want to, that are really important to make sure that your pump has got the suction. So try just changing them out to see if it's something as simple as the parts. Try changing your motor over to see if it's working fine with these parts and maybe it's a motor issue and you need to go back to Eufy. There is no reset button on these that you can use. So if you find that it is the pump motor, you are going to need to go back to Eufy. If it is something as simple as a part, then simply replace those on the pump that wasn't working. Okay, so it's not connecting to the Eufy app. Now, one of the things that's happened in recent times is Eufy have changed over their app. So when they brought out the Eufy S2, they also changed the app. So the app now is the standard Eufy app. If you are still using the Eufy Baby app and your app suddenly isn't connecting to your pumps, recommend changing over to the standard Eufy app. Your S2 will not work with the Eufy Baby app. So again, swap over to the new one. This is where they're wanting people to move to anyway. So this is also going to mean you're going to get your firmware updates, etc., etc. All right, so still not connecting to the app. Try restart your phone, see if that helps. Make sure your Bluetooth is on your device. Try turning your pump on and off, see if that helps. If it doesn't, then try uninstalling and reinstalling the app to see if that then helps. If you have a firmware update, so you can see on here, latest version, to fix unknown issues with overheating. This is what a firmware update is. So I can click that and update, just making sure you've got the latest update. If it's not connecting, sometimes it's as simple as just giving it an update, and then make sure too that your permissions are turned on for your pump. All right, so that should be the app. The biggest one for me is really making sure you're in the new Eufy app versus the Eufy Baby. That did get me out when I got the new S2. It took me a little bit to figure it out, shamefully, but that was the issue. I was simply just using the older app. Okay, so pain and discomfort, why we are pumping. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable when they're pumping. If you are uncomfortable while you are pumping, something is not right. So let's make sure we check this flange size. Again, you don't want your nipple rubbing on the outside because the tunnel's too small. You don't want to be drawing in and compressing your areolar tissue. So we are wanting to make sure we have the correct flange size. Try reducing the suction. Remember I said we don't want to be the highest suction possible and creating that uncomfortable position, sucking our nipple off. Go down low, start low and work your way up till you find a comfortable suction strength for you. And then we also want to make sure our positioning, make sure your nipple is up and aligned centrally. Now this is actually quite hard to do with your Eufy S1 Pro versus say your Spectra, which has the see-through flange. But when you're putting it on, just lean forward, pop your nipple in centrally, and then lift it back up. If your pump is still not working after all of these issues, then it's time to go to the Eufy help and contact Eufy to see if they can help troubleshoot it. Sometimes if you've been pumping for a long time with your pump and your motor suddenly loses suction, or it stops working, you might have just reached the end of your life of your pump motor. They are electronics. They're not designed to last for 10 years. They do have a pump motor life on them, which is normally around the 500 hours. So it could be something that your pump simply isn't working. Could be a fault with your pump that either they know about and they can help you troubleshoot, or it could be something that's under warranty and you can get your pump replaced. So if in doubt and you've tried all your troubleshooting tricks and it hasn't worked, go back and contact Eufy. So I hope this helps. If it has, love a thumbs up. It helps this get seen by other people. Love for you to share your experience. Again, that might help somebody. If I've missed a troubleshooting trick, I'd love for you to be able to pop it in the comments and help somebody else. And if you want more videos like this, then hit that subscribe. Cheers.